The following podcast will contain spoilers, tangents, hot takes, and excessive foul language. Viewer discretion is advised. Enjoy the show.
Greetings, horror fans, and welcome to episode 297 of Frightmares. I'm your host, Austin Proctor, and joining me today for 2024's Destroy All Neighbors is Gabrielle Proctor.
Hello.
And since this is the bonus episode, and the goal for this year is to have a director on the bonus episode for each month, we have the director of Destroy All Neighbors, Mr. Josh Forbes. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you guys doing?
We are doing pretty well.
I got my
that's
Destroy All
awesome.
Neighbors shirt on. I'm prepared. I'm properly branded. So yeah, how are you guys?
We're doing good. Did you have the shirt custom made, or is there a way I can obtain a Destroy All Neighbors shirt?
That's a good question.
It was made by Creeporama.
Oh.
I don't know if you know those guys.
Yeah.
They may have made that Psycho Gourmet shirt you're wearing right now.
Okay.
Possibly. It was like a limited run, but so the answer probably is no. But if you ask them, then maybe the answer will become yes.
Okay.
I don't really get money either way, so
you can send money directly to your PayPal or Venmo if you want to support Josh Forbes.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So this is
Not a bad idea.
This is exciting because I remember last year. I think you, Gabby, you were the one that found this movie.
No idea how.
No idea how. She came across it, and I was like, "Oh, this looks like a lot of fun." And this was one of the first ones that we watched last year, and we really enjoyed it. This was on my top 10 honorable mentions last year. It was a really good movie. So coming into 2025, I was like, all right, if we're gonna do some directors, I was like, I want to get some kind of indie directors of movies we really liked. And you answered, and I was like, this is amazing. I love this because we love this movie so much, and I think I just have to talk about it. So
yeah.
So before we get into the questions here, is there anything you wanted to mention off the cuff, Gabby, before we continue?
About the movie?
Just about general things.
Man, I wish
here.
I could remember how I found it. I just remember seeing the title card going, this poster looks great.
Oh,
we should watch this movie. Well, he always has like the big list, and I'm the one that always comes in with these random smaller films.
Right.
Like, but did you see these ones? And we always end up loving those ones the most.
Oh, yeah.
And
Right.
I was probably following Alex Winter's
That's
Facebook page or something, because I was I don't know how I found it, but I'm really glad I did. It's on. I have my own little letterbox list of weird indie horror movies, and this is on there.
This is on there. Yeah,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've noticed we're on a bunch of very random lists, or very essential core.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I've searched. You do the searching on the letterbox, and it's funny to. Yeah, I think we're on one list. It's just called trash.
Oh no.
But like in the best sense possible.
Okay.
See, to me, I love like horror movies, like this exact type of horror movie,
Oh, yeah.
and that's why I told my husband, I'm like, I have so many of these random ones that I know. I should make a list and group them together, because if you like this horror movie, they're all like the same kind of feel. And they're so much fun to watch. Like they're clearly well-loved movies, and you can see the love in making them.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of heart in this movie,
and you have to appreciate it.
I mean, that was kind of, the core like ethos in the movie. The whole there's a phrase that goes on and on about not everyone will like it, but the right one will. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of like our guiding force making the movie. Was just like, okay, we're making like. Not everybody's gonna like this movie, but like we live in such a niche world that it's like, okay, if we make a movie that like we would really like, there's enough us's hopefully to like float it,
Oh yeah.
But yeah, that was the goal. It was like, okay, I want to, especially with horror comedies, it's like there's not there's not a ton of them, not a ton of really good ones. So I was like, okay, if we could at least just be like, we don't have to beat those movies, but like if we can just be in the same, area of the store, as an Evil Dead or a Dead Alive or whatever, then like, then I can die a happy person.
That's fair.
That's totally fair. Yeah, I think we both think you nailed it with this one. So
absolutely.
Thank you.
Some information I was able to find in my limited research about Mr. Josh here is he's a director who began his career back in 2007, where he started out by doing music videos for people like Metro Station, Sarah. I'm gonna butcher this.
Sarah Bareilles.
Bareilles. Okay.
Bareilles. Yeah. The
Fray, Linka, The Offspring, and more. In 2012, he released his first short titled "Just Pretend" and followed that up in 2013 with a short called Home Cooking. In 2015, he debuted his first feature film, Contracted Phase 2, and then would wind up doing Destroy All Neighbors last year. Before Josh was directing things, he was involved in 2 hilarious parody shorts called Thumb Wars, The Fandom Cuticle, and Thumbtanic as a production assistant. In 1999, he would be a PA on a wildly underrated comedy called Kung Pao Enter the Fist. Josh has not done much acting, but he was part of 2 music videos in 2019, a couple producer credits, second unit director, and a special credit thanks in the Mortuary Collection. So I have been dying to know, because I love Kung Pao so much.
Oh, yeah.
What's the story here? I have to know. I'm like dying to know.
Right. Well, I mean, so Steve Odenkirk, because obviously there's Bob Odenkirk I think this was Steve Odenkirk.
Yeah.
There's they're unrelated, but one of them has an N in their name. So Steve, like when I was in college, I think it was like post college, some friends of mine were like working for him as a PA, and so he did the Thumb movies, the Thumbtanic and the Thumb Wars, and so that was I was a PA. In Thumbtanic, I played the grandma, and so my big creative contribution was I was like, well, how about I soak my thumb in water and then it'll look all wrinkly? And they were like, oh, that's genius. So, so after that, then Steve did the movie Kung Pao Enter the Fist. Okay. And I got on as a PA, and I think I was just on it for like maybe a couple weeks. It went union. It was a non-union movie. This is like a funny story. I think it's funny. So I was a PA. Like, what's weird, like, because the whole movie is kind of like Forrest Gumping him into a kung fu movie, right? Like, so you'd think that the whole premise of the movie should just be like, just get me on a green screen, put me in, dub it over, and then you're done, But for whatever reason, like they wanted to shoot all this stuff for the movie, and so there was one scene or a sequence or whatever. That was like kind of shot in the desert, like in somewhere in California, like out of the desert. And so I was a PA, and I was tasked with watching all the equipment. Like everybody went into lunch, and so I just sat out in the desert watching all this equipment, like all these cameras and stuff. And I didn't know, like I kind of still don't know how long lunch is supposed to be. Like it's a half hour or hour. Like I never know. So I'm like, okay, half hour goes by. Nobody comes back. Fine. An hour goes by. Nobody comes back. Like an hour and a half. Like I'm like on the walkie-talkie. Like, hey, what's going? Hello. And I'm like 22 or whatever. Like watching like millions of dollars of equipment, and I'm like, I'm gonna go find out what's going on because I'm like getting sunburned. So I walked back into camp, and everyone's just sitting down. They're all on strike. And they had this like. So everybody they all had just, quit essentially. And so they had these union reps there who were like yelling at everybody. And like one's yelling at me like, hey, like how much is your time worth? And I'm like, I'm sure it's worth more than I'm getting paid. But like, I'm a PA. Like I don't know the rules, but like, whatever. And he's like, well, you should unionize or whatever. And I'm like, okay. And then I like go to the production coordinator or whatever. I'm like, hey, I'm union now. And he's like, PAs can't be in the union. Like, shut up. So anyway, so yeah, I had to come back the next day and like clean up the shoot. And then apparently they took it to Mexico to escape labor laws. Anyway, but yeah, but one of my favorite things on that movie too was that like Steve, I had to go to his hotel room for something. Like, hey, he needs whatever, some dumbbells or something like that, because he was always like trying to work out. And I remember seeing like in his hotel room, he had this. I can't remember the name of the book. He had like one of those like intro to directing books.
Okay.
You know, like how to frame shots or something, and he had it on his nightstand. And I just thought that was like so crazy that this guy who's doing this big movie and who like he did like Ace Ventura and Ace Ventura 2 and stuff. And then it's like, wait, this guy just has his has this goofy like how to be a director book. I just thought that was funny. That's all I got.
Wow, he did. I didn't realize that he did write. Let's see. He wrote when Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls, The Nutty Professor, Patch Adams.
Yeah.
Whoa. Okay. He did. I did not realize there was this many Thumb movies. There's a lot of Thumb movies. Thumb Wars, Thumbtanic.
Yeah.
Bat Thumb, The Blair Thumb. Oh, this is great. I'm gonna have to deep dive on that.
My parents own the Thumb War movies. My mom.
Your parents own the Thumb War
they're
movies?
big Star Wars fans, and someone bought that for my mom one time, and she's like, "What is this?"
This is everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think they're funny. Like they're weird. Like it was so like pre-internet. Like I mean, maybe we had YouTube or something, but like it so was an idea designed for the internet that just never. He's a brilliant guy. Like very innovative. Like kind of annoying. What I mean is like when you'd call the office at this place, and like it was not like a big company or whatever. They were like in San Juan Capistrano. Like they're just like off the grid. Just you'd call and the hold music was just him going like, hey, like, you know what I mean? Like the scene in Dumb and Dumber. Like, do you want to hear the most annoying sound ever? Like that was his hold music. But like. He probably recorded like 3 hours of it.
Oh,
it's like, wow. It's crazy. Anyway, that's Steve Odekirk for you.
He sounds like a hilarious guy. Oh my God. So
enough about him.
So was directing kind of always an end goal for you, or did you just kind of happen into it? I mean, you mentioned seeing that the book in his room. Is that something that you looked at and were like, hey, maybe this could be something for me, or what's the?
Oh yeah. I wanted to. I think I've kind of always wanted to direct. Like since I figured out it was a job.
Okay.
It's weird because I kept trying to like go through my past and like unravel like when did I decide. Because I'm I have ADD. I'm a very distracted person. Like but it's like somehow I was able to like point a course towards wherever the hell I am now. But yeah, I think I always wanted to direct, I guess is the long version. I wanted to be a comedian when I was very young. I was like, because I hate to say it, but I saw Bill Cosby himself, not his actual self, but it was a special he did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is a landmine of an anecdote. But just I remember as a kid seeing a stand-up comedian and being like, holy crap, adults can do this. You can just, but same thing with movies. It's like, we would get those HBO would do these like, you get a free week or whatever. Like we were never fancy like that to like pay for HBO, but everyone now and then we'd get it for a week. And so, when that happened, you'd see like in between movies that have these behind the scenes. And I was like, this is what I want to do. Anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I know I'm a fan. I know the movies Contracted and Contracted Phase 2. I'd say they're pretty, like not very, like they're not really, no one really talks about them. I saw Contracted a long time ago, and then I was like, holy shit, there's a Phase 2, and it picks up like directly where the other one left off. And I enjoy them. It's like, I think they were before It Follows, because it's basically like It Follows in a sense. So how did you get involved with Phase 2? Is that something that you were approached with, or did you have an idea?
You'll break your neck with that tonal shift from the first one to the second one. It was one of these things where I think a friend of mine, texted me and was like, hey, do you want to do a zombie movie? And I was like, yes, I do.
Done.
And so he put me in touch with these guys at Boulder Light, JD and Rafi, and they've since like gone on to like they did the Barbarian movie and whatever the new one is.
Whoa. Companion?
And yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Whoa.
Which is crazy. Like, because at the time these guys were like super young and perhaps a bit green. Let's say a little bit green. And so anyway, I guess they had done the first one with Eric England, and I think it was very much like Eric's show. It was like his baby. And for those of you who haven't seen it, like it's kind of a serious, like almost like a mumblecore, slow burn body horror of a girl who she has a sexual encounter, and then she develops this disease that by the end of it she becomes a zombie. That always just rubbed me the wrong way, because I feel like horror works best when it's like you make a poor choice and then you have to deal with it.
Right.
But this, like, she goes to like sleep with this dude, but then he like, takes advantage of her, and then it's like, I don't know. Then it's tonally it's weird. Anyway, but God, what's wrong with me? I just woke up. So anyway, so they had this movie, and it was like a relatively successful indie, movie. Perhaps it would be on your list, Gabby, if you were making a list at that time.
There you go.
And anyway, so I guess Eric had an idea for a second one, and these guys didn't like it or something. There was some sort of fallout, and so he was out of the picture. And so they, I think they somehow had I think the first one did well enough that like those financiers were like, hey, we'll pay for another one. And so it kind of got rushed into production, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like they had a script, and actually first they asked me, they were like, do you have an idea for a sequel? That was the first initial one. This was like 6 months before we actually ended up doing the movie. Do you have any ideas? And I was like, oh yeah, I love that movie, whatever. So I like came up with, I had a pitch of like the guy, Charlie Kuntz, like the kind of heavy set guy. And it was really funny, who like is now on, I don't know, one of those like procedural shows or whatever, as like the computer nerd. Yeah. I was like, he was my favorite part. He was so funny. So I was like, oh, what if it was like he goes off on spring break or something. He goes off on spring break, and like everybody starts hooking up, and then everybody turns into zombies. That was my pitch. And so I was like, hey, we should do this. And they're like, well, actually we have a guy who wrote a script or whatever. Anyway, so then like I think they just I had a meeting with these guys, and then they just sort of ghosted me or whatever. Like I think they found somebody else, which is fine. That's how it works. And then, I remember like one day I was literally like walking with a friend of mine to a coffee shop, and I looked over, and like the Coen brothers were shooting, I can't remember what they were shooting, but they were shooting something at like the movie theater nearby. And I was like, I love the Coen brothers. And I was like, man, that contracted movie, I think I really dodged a bullet on that one. Like, yeah, I don't know why, like, I don't know why the Coen brothers factor into this, but I just remember that, like seeing Ethan or Joel and it just being like, oh yeah, that's what I want to be doing. I don't want to be doing this, whatever, and then my phone rang, and they were like, hey, I think the subtext was like, the other director, like, headed for the hills. Like, do you want to do it? And I was like, sure. And it was like, okay, we're shooting like next week. Or maybe I had like 2 weeks, but there was not a lot of time to prepare. This is me making a ton of excuses. But I'm proud of what we were able to do in the time that we had with the cast and crew that we had. And I was able to pull in a lot of my friends. And, it's one of these things where, like, I think once my sense of humor and you watch it again, if you are forced to, like in some sort of hostage situation or something, you'll know what parts are me. Like, okay. Just a lot of the gore sequences are really like, those were the ones that I was really able to put a nice touch on. And I think the soundtrack is amazing. Jonathan Snipes, who's done a ton of great work musically. He did Room 237 and a bunch of stuff. He's great.
Wow.
The soundtrack is really, really good. There's a lot of good gore in it. There's some very funny moments, but it's, I know Eric Engel was really upset when it came out, and now I get it. Like, at the time I was like really pissed at him, but we've since like buried the hatchet or whatever. But it just is what it's just a weird such a weird, but it was nice to get my first one under my belt or whatever.
Okay.
Because I had done probably, like maybe 70 music videos by that time. So like I've been doing stuff for a long time, and like it was kind of funny because normally I think a normal director would just be like scared or intimidated, like, oh shit, like we're shooting next week, like what's going on? But for me, I'm like, I'm so used to that that it was like, yeah, let's roll with it, and like we'll figure it out as we go. And anyway, it was a great like boot camp or like a master's degree or whatever in filmmaking that helped. So then when Destroy All Neighbors came along, it was like, all right, I got this. This is easy. Not really easy, but.
Well, perfect.
Yeah.
That's a perfect segue into talking about the movie at hand. If you haven't seen Destroy All Neighbors at this point in the podcast, why are you listening to this? Go stop this now. Go watch it on Shudder. Enjoy it. But I'll give the brief synopsis here. It is a struggling prog rock musician, William Brown, finds himself in a living nightmare when he accidentally kills Vlad, the neighbor from hell. And speaking of the neighbor from hell, is this in any way loosely inspired by like an annoying... Okay, yes! Yes.
Really had to pull that one out of you.
Yes. All right.
Yeah. No, I mean, so like the way that it started is me and my friend Charlie, who was one of the writers of the movie. It's funny. We had a podcast too that I kind of hope nobody finds. So I should stop talking about it. But there was a podcast that I really loved, a British podcast called Mondo Movie. Like they kind of like broke up my brain into like horror. Like it was just, I got obsessed with it and it really like helped me. So I was like, oh, we'll make the American unlicensed sequel to their, so we call it Mondo Movie 2 was our podcast. Anyway, we were meeting regularly to do this podcast, and we started talking about like before we started recording, I was like, dude, like my neighbor kept me up all night. Like this guy, we had this like sort of psychopath who, like I think at the time, like I had a kid, a baby. That's how they start. That's the stage one of humans. And this dude would just like I remember he pounded on the wall and was like, oh, I'm gonna fucking kill your baby.
Oh my God.
Yeah, scary. And or like you'd hear this like banging in the hallway like at 2 a.m, and you like I would poke my head out and he would just be like jamming his key, like just just hoping that one of the keys would fit or something, and then he'd like look at me.
Oh my God.
And so I was complaining to Charlie about this guy. I'm just like, dude, I would lay in bed just envisioning ways to kill this guy. That was all I wasn't planning on doing it. I didn't do it.
For the record,
but
yeah,
I would
for the
just
record.
sit there thinking like, oh my God, like I'm so angry at this guy. And so Charlie was like, oh yeah, well, you got to hear about my neighbor. And he had this neighbor who had these crazy parties like late at night, and these ladies would be coming in and out, and he would play Sade all the time. Like what's the big Sade stuff? Like I don't know, like some sort of weird easy listening R&B, but he would just like crank it up. And he showed me like
that's mood music.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and Charlie had a video. He recorded this video of this guy, this neighbor. And at one point, like, because the neighbor was just like, he'd be like, hey man, can you turn it down? And it's like, oh, why? What's going on? Hey. And at one point, one of the videos is like, feel my muscles, Charlie, feel them.
Oh God.
And I was like, this is psychotic. So, but I was like, that was sort of started the spark of it, where it's like, okay, like what if you had this neighbor and like, cause he and I are both nervous wrecks or whatever. And so it was like, oh, what if you had this guy, this thing that like you could not, you just felt emasculated by, and like you can't confront. And then you do, and you end up killing the guy. And then I was like, oh, what if it's sort of a telltale heart? Like, okay, then you've killed this guy, but now what do you do? And like the cops are coming, and that's sort of how it started.
Okay.
But I mean, what I like to say too, like I see all these horror movies all the time that are like about haunted houses. But like the idea of getting to own a home in LA is like so foreign to me that it's like, that's not scary. Like,
right.
Like I would happily move into the Amityville house, like with the bees and the whatever. I'd That'd be amazing. Like, I don't care, like, to me, what's scary is being stuck in an apartment and never being able to leave, never being able to like find a place to live that like, doesn't have maniacs next door.
You get a sweet deal on a house. You and the ghost are just going to have to work it out.
Yeah.
Oh, totally. Yeah. But
absolutely. The nightmare neighbors, I think I have had those. You've had those.
Oh,
like the people you're just like, why?
Why are you like this? What is wrong with you?
Yeah.
We had neighbors. We were fortunate enough to buy a townhome at one point, and our neighbors during the start of COVID decided to demo their tile flooring
while we're working from
with
home.
no notice. So all we're hearing is jackhammering for 2 days straight. We're like, why?
Yeah, and we're working from home, trying to work from home, and it's busy as hell. And I'm like, this is the best storyline I've ever been in. I love this. This is so great. And
yeah, we had some. It was a place like in East Hollywood, aka Little Armenia. That's what it's called. It's not like a pejorative. But I mean, we just had all these crazy people in the building all the time. Like, I remember at one point there was like this woman who lived across the hallway, and at some point I heard her, like, she was just screaming. She's screaming, and she's like, "You're killing me! You're killing!" And I think she was on the phone, but like, I didn't know, so I had to call. I called the police a lot when I lived there, actually. But I called the police, and it was that sort of thing where, like, I didn't want to intrude on her, whatever her situation was. But I just knew, like, if she got killed and the cops showed up and they're like, "Hey, do you know anything?" Like, yeah, she was saying something about you're killing me.
That's fine.
I wasn't sure. I didn't want to intrude,
Didn't want to be too nosy,
Yeah, but that's just always the funny thing about living in an apartment. It's just like often there's great people, and then often there's like total weirdos.
Total fucking.
There's also
weirdos.
another guy up the street that looked very similar to the initial idea that we had of Vlad.
Okay.
There was this guy. I mean, he looked like a bowling ball or a bowling pin. I mean, this like bald guy with like a wife beater. I mean, a partner beater. Sorry.
Partner beater.
Just kidding. But he was this huge guy who would like. At one point, I saw him like throwing a couch like in his yard and just like screaming at his wife all the time. And so I would see this guy, as I was walking my dog, and I'm like, this is going in the movie. So.
Yeah, you said couch. I'm like, oh, the couch.
Like the couch that the Vlad was just throwing down the hallway.
Yeah.
So I assume this was something that you and your friends came up with, and the script was your idea. Did you shop this around to people, or did you take it to film festivals, or what was the creative process getting this actually produced and stuff?
So Charlie and I kind of like knocked our heads together and wrote a draft or two. Okay. Kind of the arrangement was like, all right, Charlie, you're the writer and I'm the director, but like I'll have a hand in the writing too, whatever. So he and I like would work on iterations of the script, and then at a certain point it was like, oh, this is really good. And I want to say we sent it around town. Like, that's probably not true. Like, it isn't true. It was just I sent it to like the 3 people I knew who had development jobs or and we just weren't getting any bites. I mean, it's funny. I sent it to this guy, Dallas Saunier, who's now produces a lot of these like right-wing movies now or whatever. Nice guy, cool guy. Anyway, but I remember he read it and he was like, this is great, but he's like, the protagonist is like really unlikable. Why would anybody care about this guy who like kills his neighbor, I remember I sent it to somebody else, I think another company, and they were like, maybe it was Fangoria or something. And it was like, it was like not horror enough. I think that the consensus was like, oh, it's not horror enough to be horror, and it wasn't comedy enough to be comedy or something like that.
Weird.
Or whatever. Yeah. So it was just like people liked it. But I don't think they saw it the way that I saw it. And things didn't really click into gear until like I sent it to Jonah Ray, and I think I emailed him like, hey, I have this movie that's like Barton Fink and Evil Dead or whatever, and he was like, send it to me now, and I did, and he was like, this is amazing, like let's and so once he got on board, we did some revisions of the script, like my friend Mike Benner got on board, and he did a draft, and then or a couple drafts maybe. And maybe this is boring. Maybe this is interesting. We'll find out. But
I'm loving it.
And so we ended up, it's like just kept getting better and better. Like initially, William's character was like he's going to be a comic book artist. It was like more inspired by like Better Off Dead. Like I'm a big Savage Steve Holland fan.
Okay.
And so the idea was that he has this crazy imagination, and so things would happen we had this idea, like he worked at a bank, and he hated his boss, and like a hand reaches down and like grabs his boss and throws it or whatever, which is a lot of like stuff happening in his head.
Right.
And, but when we brought in Jonah, Mike Benner was like, well, he's, what if instead of a comic book, like his thing was like, I'm going to write this comic book. And he's like, well, what if he's a musician, cause Jonah's a musician. Okay. And I was like, oh, that's genius. Like, that's a really great way to, it's more, I want to say it's more cinematic. I mean, being able to Better Off Dead things is cool, but it's like, this is like a doable, like, oh, and I don't think I've seen that before.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so we got Joan on board. We revised it to be more music oriented. And then the pandemic hit, and it was that sort of thing where like Jonah has a much longer list of famous people than I do in his phone. So Jonah had this office in South Pasadena, and he like across the alleyway was Alex Winter's office.
No.
And so we would sit in there and revise the script and like come up with ideas. And I would just look out this window, and I'm like, I'm just looking at the guy who did Freak. Like, this is, one of my favorite movies. Like, this really has the tone of what we're trying to accomplish. And I'm like, can we send it to him? Like, just to be a producer, or I don't know.
Slide it
like,
through the door.
Yeah, right. Just put it under the door or something.
Yeah. And Jonah's like, oh yeah, well, I know him. We've met before or whatever. Like, and I'm like, dude, come, like,
hello.
Like, I don't know. I don't know. Like, but then during the pandemic, it was just kind of like nothing was happening. And he's like, I'm just going to send it to him. And it just so happened that he like really liked it. It was like, guys, this is awesome. Like, what do you, or because at first he was like, just to let you know, I don't really do this sort of thing. There's a big chance I might come down with a case of scurvy, is what he had said in his email. And then like a few days later, he's like, good news, I don't have scurvy. How do I get, where do I fit in? And I was like, well, anywhere you want, I'd you could let your name to it. You could give us some notes, or you could, I'm like, if you want, you could come on board as a producer and like, you could be in the movie. He's like, oh, where would I be? And I'm like, you could be Vlad, you could be the main, and he was like, it just started, the wheels started clicking or whatever, where it's like, oh, like, he's like, I do love being in prosthetics. And, cause that was always an idea for me too. Like from day one, I was like, I want him to be this prosthetics guy. Like, it's like, what if like a troll from Labyrinth just like was your neighbor, And so anyway, so that's how that happened. And then he came on, and it was, I want to say like at least a year of revising the script. Like we brought on Jared Logan, another writer, and, we just beat the script into submission. And eventually, like, we got to a point where like Alex was happy with it and we're all happy with it. And then he has agents, and they send him around. Again, it's just like mysterious. Oh, it got sent around town, whatever. And there were no bites. And so we were just like, well, what do we do? And then Joe Lynch, I don't know if you know Joe Lynch.
Yeah.
Director of Everly, and recently, what's the Flesh movie?
Oh, Suitable Flesh.
Suitable Flesh.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Wrong Turn too. So Jonah knew him, and he told him about the movie, and he was like, "Oh, dude, this is amazing! Oh, this has to happen." He's like the most enthusiastic, encouraging, just sweetheart of a guy. And he's like, I think he had just done a creep show at Shudder, and was like, let me send it to these guys at Shudder. And they latched onto it immediately, and they got it. They got the humor. They got everything. Like those guys are at Shudder just so sweet, and like they're in it for all the right reasons, you know? And I think at that time, I think they had some big injection of cash. I don't know how anything works, but I think they had like a big chunk of money that they were like, let's fund a lot of these like kind of smaller movies and, you know, build up our originals on the platform, and see what sticks, you know. And so anyway, so that's we had a meeting, and it was, you know, a Zoom. Again, it was during COVID, and our first meeting, they were like, this is great. Like, I'm going to get my checkbook out right now. Ha, ha, ha. And we're like, okay.
Do it. Do that.
Do that. Yeah. How much?
Do that thing. Yeah. People have checkbooks? That's weird. And if it is a check, I want it to be a huge one. You know, just
I want to frame that. Like on my wall.
But but then it ended up taking like probably another year of just like,
wow.
I mean, that's the thing with like working with any company. It's like, oh, this executive got fired, or this person moved, or like now we're changing our direction to this, and like it was a lot of those sort of like weird emails that we would get of like, hey, we're still thinking about you, we still want to make this movie, but you know, there's been these shifts and da 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 da. And eventually it happened, and it's such a miracle, because it's such a weird movie. Like it's, you know, I thought in my head, and I was like, this is awesome. Like it's one of these things too where I don't know, like I have like a bazillion ideas, a bazillion scripts and whatever in various stages, and there's a part of you that goes like, maybe I should stop pushing this one up the hill. Like maybe, you know, maybe it's time to switch and try something new or whatever. But I just kept going back to like, no, I really want to make this movie. Like it's really funny.
Yeah.
And it's really cool. And I think people get into it. And so, yeah.
The rest is history. That's amazing how everything just linked up. So you knew someone who knew someone who knew someone. And then, I mean, that's just how Hollywood works, I feel. You know what I mean? That's how it happens.
But I think it's nice to put that in that perspective too. A lot of people think it just happens overnight. No, you want to get projects done. Sometimes it takes years to make that happen.
And I'm sure COVID did not help for sure. That definitely didn't. But it's crazy to know you guys have been working on this for so long. I mean, I think the end product is so good.
Absolutely.
And I think it's very polished. So since you we naturally went to Alex Winter, let's go back to that real quick because I had a couple questions on that. So of how you basically answered the question on how he got involved, which is perfect. So and you know, he did prosthetics. How long did those prosthetics take? Because they looked really good. So was that like a few hours, or like was that like a whole day? How long did those take?
I want to say, I think it was like maybe 4 hours. Like at least 3 hours, maybe. I should have this answer in my pocket.
You're fine.
But yeah, I think it was a significant amount of time.
Yeah.
Like probably I'm gonna say 4 or 5 hours. So he would show up like super early, and then we'd show up later. But I mean, just to give a shout out on that end. So Gabe Bartalos was the guy who sculpted his mask or whatever. Sculpted the Vlad face, and he did a bunch of other stuff in the movie. Gabe worked on like a lot of Frank Henenlotter movies. Like he did Brain Dead. He did the little Aylmer puppet.
Yeah.
I don't know if you or he also did, I think, like Basket Case 2 and 3. I think he did. So like all the crazy, insane, surreal characters in those movies, like he sculpted those. And Charlie had been like an intern, I think, for his company, and so that's how we got Gabe involved.
Wow.
And Gabe was just a freaking sweetheart. Like he's one of these guys, like you see him in person, he looks like if Anton LaVey was like a linebacker. Like he looks very intimidating, you know. Just this big bald like guy who makes monsters, but he is the sweetest, funniest, most enthusiastic guy. Sadly, his house is one of the houses that burned down recently.
Oh no.
So if you want, there's it's pretty easy probably to find like a GoFundMe. There's a GoFundMe to help them get back on their feet. But anyway, so he did all that, and then we brought on Bill Corso to do the makeup. So he would like it's like Gabe designed it all, and then Bill like did the application. And Bill, I mean, he's just a freaking genius. Like he has an Academy Award from doing, I think it was Lemony Snicket.
Whoa.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, he kept joking that like, oh yeah, I just came off this indie movie. And we're like, oh, what was it? He's like, oh, Indiana Jones 4 or whatever.
The Dial of Destiny.
The
yeah.
indie movie.
Good grief.
Yeah. And so he like, I guess for that, I'm sure he did a bunch of stuff, but I know that he had done, like they took the stunt guys and then he would make them look like Harrison Ford.
Whoa.
So then, yeah. But so it was just like total luck. We just lucked into so many amazing things. But I think the idea is that we were all in it for the right reasons. It was kind of like hey, let's put on a show. We're making this thing. We're going to try and do it as practical as possible. A lot of people say that it feels like a throwback, which is kind of funny because it's like I didn't aim to be a throwback. Like this is just how I see the world, and this is the type of movies that I watch.
Right.
In the way that the Nosferatu guy probably only watch, or Ari Aster, like they only watch Criterion movies. Like all I watch is Tubi.
Yes.
So you've seen Slay?
Yeah. Robert Eggers. I kind of want to say Dave Eggers, but that's a writer. But it was that thing like, okay, these are the movies we love. This is the sort of thing we want. This is the tone we want. And it was like a snowball, or, I feel like a lot of these projects, there's almost like a sense of gravity, like, as the mass builds, like it starts to attract more and more people.
Yeah.
Because then we were able to bring in Ryan Katner and Brett Morris to do the music. Like, Ryan's a friend. He's in the band Man Man.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. She's a fan.
Yeah.
She's a fan.
I saw you had Man Man on the soundtrack. I'm like, what? Because I have some of Man Man's songs on my phone. I've had them for years, and I was like, that's the most random band I have on my phone. What are you talking about?
Yeah. It's good stuff.
Well, that was the thought too, is like, I kind of straddle these worlds, or maybe, I don't know how you straddle 3 different worlds, but like,
it's like a prong system.
Yeah.
It's like it's like a stool really. But like, like I'm in the comedy world. Like I know a ton of comedy people, I'm in the music video world. I know that world. And then it's like, then I love horror. So I'm in the horror world. And like, there's a ton of horror movies where like they don't look very good for whatever reason. And it's like, like I have those chops. Like I've been doing, like I know how to make things look good for cheap or whatever. And then similarly, it's like, you'll see stuff where it's like, oh, that's not like, you're trying to be funny, but it's not funny. And like, we live in a town with all these hilarious people. Like, why are you not, it's just like, they don't know these folks or whatever. So we were able to sort of like, and similarly with the music, it's like, let's get a band that's really awesome, that like, whatever, like let's instead of, I don't know what the other alternative would have been, but like, again, it's the whole idea too, is it's just like to find the people around you and to like bring it together.
Yeah.
And to make something with the resources you have, I guess, is the idea or the goal.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we've tackled basically how all these awesome people got involved, and on that subject, you have a lot of other awesome actors in this movie. Jonah Ray, Tom Lennon, Kumail Nanjiani. How did they get involved? Because I'm like a huge fan. I love Tom Lennon. I find him absolutely fucking hilarious. Is it something that was just like auditions were held, or is it just more of like I knew him and he knew this person and they were able to come in?
That's all Jonah. Like,
wow.
I mean, he, it's like, it's funny how casting works. Like things are always in flux. Like for a hot minute, like the Kumail role, it was like, maybe Keanu will do this, so there was crazy. Like Jonah kept like revising the script, like, oh, here's like a version where it's a Keanu, and then here's a Kumail, and then at some point it was like, what if we could get the two of them together? And then that was a scene. And so similarly, like the role that Tom played, it was like these different iterations of like, oh, what if it was Bruce Campbell? What if it was this person or that person or whatever? And then at some point, Jonah was like, oh, I could reach out to Tom Lennon. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, yes.
Do that.
Please.
Like, how is that even possible? How is that like, you know, because I grew up watching The State, like his show, the sketch show called The State. And then from there, they did a show called Viva Variety and then Reno 911. And like his comedy, you know, and then this is like more David Wayne, but like all the like Wet Hot American Summer and like just that whole like point of view in comedy was like so influential to me and like such a huge fan. And so Tom is just like such a sweetheart. He was like, yeah, I'll do it. What day? Da, 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 da.
Wow.
And like when he showed up on set, he went up to Jonah and he's like, oh, I read the script on the plane over. It's really good. It's funny. You know, so he was down to play even before he knew what he was doing.
That's amazing.
And he just brought it. I mean, that's one of the more surreal, wonderful moments of my life was just like, I'm directing my comedy hero to fight a head puppet, you know, and the head of another one of my childhood heroes, you know, not even just childhood, just hero period. Like these are guys who, not to go off on a tangent, but you know, it's like guys like Tom Lennon or Alex, like they're not like a one-trick pony. Like Tom Lennon wrote like all the Night at the Museum movies, I think. Like, whoa, he's a huge writer.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that.
And script doctor and stuff. And you know, it's these guys who are always working, who are always doing cool stuff, always doing funny stuff. Or interesting, like have an interesting point of view. You know, I mean, with Alex as well, it's like, you know, not only did he do the Bill and Ted movies, you know, but and Lost Boys and all that stuff, but like he makes these really amazing, serious documentaries, and he has like a very strong point of view, and is like very into like, I don't want to use the word social justice because that has like so much stink on it, but like he's these are guys who like aren't in it just to make money or to whatever. It's like they have they're just really thoughtful, interesting guys. And that's always been kind of, I keep talking about like my North Star where I'm pointing, but like those, like even before I met Alex, when I realized like, oh, this guy's been doing commercials and he's been doing other things since those movies, like he was in those documentaries. I was like, oh, that's the career I want, you know? Because it's very easy to be like, oh, I want to be the next Quentin Tarantino or something. But it's like, I think it's a bit more achievable to follow those kind of guys where it's like, keep working, keep making awesome stuff, be nice, be good to people, you know, stay interesting. But yeah, Tom Lennon was amazing. And Kumail was great too. That was fantastic. I mean, he and Jonah used to have, they had a TV show on Comedy Central called Meltdown, which was based on the two of them. They hosted this comedy show in the back, like in the basement of a comic book shop called Meltdown.
Okay.
And they did that for, I think maybe a couple of years, and then it became a TV show and whatever. But anyway, so they have this rapport that's like, so it's unmatchable. Like it's this chemistry that you can't generate. And so that scene between the two of them was just so funny. And we like, you know, I think Jonah wrote the script, and it was just fun. Like, just as we're walking to the set, like we just kept riffing back and forth of like, oh, what if it's this or this? You know, like it kept changing, and then we shot it, and it's great. I don't know, but it's funny too. It's like it felt like a Key and Peele sketch or something. In the middle of the movie.
Oh, the whole bit about like, I don't want to go on eBay. Like, I don't want to do that. That's hysterical.
I don't want to make a profile. You know?
Oh, and I know that's one of our favorite parts about this movie is the fact that every single person or character feels so unique, and they have their own manic energy and their own story going on. Is that something that kind of just naturally happened, or were there just like, was there a lot of character detailed background, or was this something you just kind of let the cast just roll with and just like go do what you want to do? Like what was the process on that?
I mean, I think that's probably, I think that's I think that's my style. Maybe I don't know.
Okay.
Like, I think that's kind of maybe how I see the world. Like, you know, I mean, it was really important. Like with Jonah and I, like, we have such a shorthand of like the movies we like, and when it, like, you know, but we like, you know, The Burbs was always a big touch point. And you know, just hit that level of like exasperation.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it was important to us. I don't know if we achieved it, but it was important to us that like the characters don't know they're in a comedy. Like they think they're in a crime movie or something, but like they're just ill-equipped to be in that movie.
Yeah.
But it was important too we really wanted to have strong characters.
Yeah.
I guess that's like a dumb thing to say.
That doesn't matter to everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like, you know, these characters, they're like a character in the film, actually. Just kidding. I hate when people do that about like, oh, this house is a character. This music is it's like, no, it's just, it's a location.
Yeah.
That's what that is.
That's how that works.
But these guys, yeah, like we wanted, you know, it's like, I met the Insane Clown Posse is a whole other story.
Oh my God.
But and I was like, I became friends with them. And Violent J said something that like stuck with me. Like he's like when they're making their music, it's like they had this thought of like, what is the action figure? What's the cartoon version of this? Like, can you take these characters? Like that was the lesson I learned, was like, you know, can you take these characters and turn it into an action figure or distill it down to back to the Coen brothers. I mean, you look at like Big Lebowski, like it's not a superhero movie, but like all those characters have very distinct, you know, even like silhouettes. That was something that Gabe and I talked about a lot. He's like, can we make each of these ghost characters or dead guy characters or whatever? Like, can you make it like their deaths so iconic or visually, you know, interesting that like you could just see their shadow and you'd know who it is. And so that was a big thing too. Like, how do we really dial in these very specific characters? I want to give a shout out too to Randy Heller, who played Eleanor. Randy Heller's the landlord in the movie.
Yes,
and
she's great.
She's the mom from Karate Kid.
Oh shit!
It's been so long since I've watched that.
It's been a while since I've seen Karate Kid. Yeah. That's amazing.
Some years have passed, but she auditioned. She does like a proper audition tape or whatever. I mean, I think Jonah's friends with her daughter, which helped. But like,
is he just friends with everybody?
Yes, he know everyone.
Yeah, he kind of is.
Like
yeah,
he's got a deep Rolodex.
He's
there.
the linchpin for Hollywood.
Right.
He really is. He's the spoke of the hub of the. Everybody else is the spokes. I don't know. The force falling apart fast. But again, with her too, like her character is extremely distinct, and so is even like the neighbor next door that moves out beforehand. The character's name is Alec. The director, the actor's name is Pete. His name's Pete.
Hey, Pete.
Good old Pete.
Shout out to Pete.
But he was amazing. Like he's in 2 scenes and he brings so much personality and dedication and like a specific point of view. That like even in just those 2 scenes, like he shows up in the second scene, you know, later at the jail, and you're just like, all right, that guy,
Pete!
You know, and
Alec.
And you know, I mean, we'll see what happens, but like we're trying to cook up a sequel or something, you know. But
my God, yes.
But it's characters like that like are pretty indelible. Like, oh, I could see Alec showing up at this other world, or similarly with like Caleb Bang Jansen, the character that Ryan Katner plays.
Yes.
You could even, you know, it's like we wanted these characters that you could see, like, I mean, you could do a whole Caleb Bang Jansen movie. I mean, I don't know who would ever pay for that, but
So when we saw him, I went and looked up his IMDb. I'm like, he has done a shockingly small amount of acting listed on this for how like
good
much he's delivering in this role. That's wild.
Yeah. And he's amazing. He's so great. And it was one of these things where it's like, he's our friend and he's, you know, it's like, how's this going to work out? Like, I want to give him the part. He's so like really wants it, but I'm like, how is this going to play? Is he going to be too big? Is it going to be too whatever? But like 10 seconds into the first take, I was like, oh yeah, this is the right choice.
Yeah.
This is it.
Oh, the dynamic and any of his, they're just
between
so funny.
Between him and Tom Lennon, their chemistry together was so great because Tom is basically just feeding off of his energy and even though Tom's really the one that's in charge, he's being run by Caleb because he's the big, he's the big
you're fired. I'm sorry.
Their energy was so great together, and I love the bit too of always having to say the full name. And that's another thing that works so well about this movie is there's a lot of good running gags and bits that you guys do, like the small ear canals and the croissants, the Swig's tasty riffs. And I think what I love about it so much is the fact that they're not overdone, because a lot of times in movies and comedies they might overdo a bit too much, but I think you did them like the perfect amount. They were they were perfectly placed and perfectly timed. It wasn't like overdone or exhausting. Like every time another bit came up, I was like, this is fucking great. So the comedic timing was there for me at least, and I know for you as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like when another character says I have really small ear canals, you're like, and then the ear and then that's hysterical. And then
the little ear pods at the end when he's in jail, I'm like, Jesus Christ, this is fucking great. All those little jokes were so good.
I mean, so much of that comes from like one of Jonah's of my favorite movies obviously is Shaun of the Dead.
Okay,
that movie does it so well. I mean, like I kind of have like an improv background where I took improv classes, and one of the things, like, I don't know if you know Del Close. He's like their original improv guru, and he created this thing called the Herald, and it's like an improv style, or it's like a form of long form improv where basically, without getting too deep into it, it's like the more you can kind of call back to earlier things, the more kind of like cohesive the thing feels, and the more like if you think it really fires those synapses where it's like, oh, I remember that. So like
feel like they've just completely forgotten about anything that happened before it.
Yeah, it really does make it feel cohesive and like tightly knit. Yeah, for sure.
And that's I feel like that's like good screenwriting in general, is like setting things up that then later pay off, and you go like, oh, of course it had to happen because whatever. Like I've never seen the Cloverfield Lane, but I saw some video about it recently, and I guess they talk about like there's like a plastic curtain like with a duck on it, and then later it's like they establish that there's this curtain and it's just a funny gag because there's a funny duck, and then like at some point you find out that the lead character like wants to be a fashion designer, and then I guess like the big solution in the third act is she takes that curtain and like makes a hazmat suit out of it or something. I don't know, but like this is a terrible example. But I love those movies where the ending is kind of a culmination of all these elements from the beginning. I mean, to continue nerding out about like improv, like the Upright Citizens Brigade, before it was an improv theater, it was like Amy Poehler and Matt Besser and I'm blanking their names, but their TV show. I don't know if you ever saw the TV show. So it was like a sketch. It was a sketch show, but then like towards the end, like the characters from other sketches would start to fold in and join the scenes, and that was always a thing in the Herald and that sort of improv. And that was something that really, I think, informed the process. Was like, okay, like every little weird quirk that we just sort of randomly came up with, like how do we bring that back? How do we pay that off? But in a way that hopefully doesn't feel like, oh, we're just throwing a catchphrase around or whatever.
No, definitely not. I didn't get that vibe.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I think that's something like you also end up appreciating that a lot more in like TV shows too, like where you brought up something in season 1 and then we never spoke about it again. Well, then you have all these holes where it's like, well, but that felt really important when we talked about it, so why aren't we bringing that up? So when that attention to detail, like if it's brought up, it exists in that world now. Don't just forget that ever happened.
Yeah. So. I never want to have a thing that happens that doesn't have a reason. Because movies are such, at least in my world, I feel like it's such an intricate puzzle or something. And you want every piece to be necessary.
Right.
I just saw this documentary about a guy who like went sailing and his sailboat crashed and he ended up just like on his this little lifeboat for like 70 days or something.
Holy.
And part of the movie is just like him listing what he has. Like, all right, we're in this thing. I have this plastic bag. I've got this tube. I've got this, you know. And then over the course of the story, like all of those elements, he somehow, he took this part of, you know, whatever, like he broke off this piece of his glasses and turned it into a hook to catch fish or whatever. I don't know. But I think that's like such a perfect example of like a really great script. It's like you have these elements. You don't need to go outside of it. You don't need the Deus Ex Machina. Like you have all the tools. Let's find the solution with all the weird shit that you've already thrown out on the table, you know. Anyway,
even with something as hilarious as small ear canals. I mean, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
It's actually funny. You've made me think of the fact that I'm sure you've seen the Conjuring movies. And my husband will be rolling his eyes momentarily.
Oh, God.
The fact that they keep showing that symbol monkey in every single movie, and they like to zoom in on it every time. And they even had a movie that took place in the house.
That room,
and didn't do anything with the monkey. I'm like, it's making me crazy. Just make the monkey movie.
Yeah. And now we're getting a monkey movie, but it's not direct, it's not related to that at all.
Osgood Perkins is doing that one. I'm like, that's my monkey movie. I don't even care at this point, man.
Take it as a win, you know.
I need the symbol monkey movie.
I'm tired of seeing it come up and never like, do anything with.
Stop zooming into that monkey if you don't mean it.
Such a tease.
Right.
Do something with it. So yeah, that's what I think works so well with this movie is little jokes, you know. I love, you know, stupid shit, stupid humor, and some of the stuff it's like man, I love this because it's just so silly. Like it's just so fun. You can clearly tell there's a lot of heart and soul in this movie. And it seems like everyone involved is just had so much fun with it because it shows. I mean, from the music to just how the movie looks incredible. It's colorful. And it's just got so many good things going for it, and that's why we wanted to have you on just to talk about it. Is there anything you've got that I haven't mentioned yet? I had like a couple more questions about Alex Winter, but
I'll talk forever. I don't care. But I mean, I will promote. So I just did a documentary on the comedian Gallagher. I don't know if you know Gallagher.
I just saw that on your IMDb.
Nice.
The watermelon guy.
Yeah.
So that's done, and we're taking it to festivals right now.
Nice.
And you know, we don't have a distributor for it yet, but keep your eye out for that. It's really good. I mean, it's interesting because it's totally different. But there's a lot of kind of similar thematic threads. I think it's sad, it's funny, it's weird. You know, it's visually absurd at times. And anyway, so there's that. That's something to promote, right?
Yeah. No, I was just about to ask you for any plugs you had, so look out for that. Is there anything else in the works from Mr. Forbes here?
I don't know. I mean, we're toying with an idea of a sequel to Neighbors, like Destroy All Neighborhoods.
Sweet.
Would be amazing.
Destroy All Neighborhoods, yes.
You know, I don't know. It's like I will see if that ever.
Okay.
If you need like some HOA dirt for inspiration, our neighborhood chat is wild.
Yeah, we get some pretty crazy shit.
You ever want to see a bunch of adults fight about dog poop and parking?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah. I love like on Nextdoor. Or do you have like a
it's a Facebook group?
It's a Facebook. It's a Facebook group.
Like the number of people like, and you didn't pick up your dog poop again. Like, okay, guys.
Yeah,
I love that stuff so much. During the pandemic, I went kind of crazy, like going on Nextdoor. Like I would just create these like, I had like a profile, and then I would get kicked out, and then I would start a new profile.
Yeah.
And I would just like troll. It was like when AI was coming out too. Like I would AI these pictures of like people in the sewers and stuff, and then I'd be like, "Hey, do you guys see this guy? He's like a jazz musician. It's kind of weird. He's just like under the, you know." And then they would kick me off. And then what's funny is there was another guy who was similarly like just trolling people, and I ended up messaging the guy and was like, "Hey, like, you know, game recognized game. Like, this is good work, brother." You know, and it turns out that he's a comedian and he's like an actor, and now we're like really good friends.
Amazing, yes.
And it's all because of the Nextdoor app. So
okay,
that's hilarious.
I love that.
But yeah, I know. I mean, there's a bunch of there's like so many scripts that I'm working on in various stages. There's a movie This is a movie my friends and I wrote called Sewer Babies.
Okay.
That I really like. It's basically like Gremlins on a college campus.
Okay. Sold.
Yeah.
I'm sold on that.
There.
Yeah.
I'm
I'll
there
watch
for that.
Yep.
It was one of these things where I had a meeting with like a production company, and I was like showing them actual full scripts, like, oh, we have this. And then they're like, well, do you have anything else? And I'm like, well, there's Sewer Babies, but you don't want to know about that. You know? I was just kind of threw it out in the water, and they were like, what's Sewer Babies? And I was like, oh, you know, and I kind of pitched it in the room. I had my friend Chris Mena, who is a writer on it. He would just get drunk at parties, and he would be like, hey, man, Sewer Babies. I'm like, what is Sewer Babies? He's like, I don't know. That's gotta be a thing.
But we're gonna make it.
Yeah, so Sewer Babies. We'll see about that.
Okay. Okay.
I've been working with this guy Ryan Nemeth, who's a wrestler. His brother's Nick Nemeth, formerly known as Dolph Ziggler. He has a script. That's amazing. It's like the two brothers. It's basically Evil Dead in a wrestling gym.
Oh my god!
Okay. You know, these two wrestlers end up like summoning like these dead other wrestlers, and they have to like fight them. You know, over the course of the night.
Okay,
well, that sounds fun.
Okay,
that's one of these things that I'm like really excited about. I mean, it's in its baby stages, but you know, that's how this stuff works. You gotta speak it into existence, like Oprah.
You get a movie.
Yeah.
All right. Well, why don't you tell everybody, all our listeners, where they can find you on the social media if they want to follow you and follow your progress?
Yeah. I think on most of the things I'm best Josh Forbes or the best Josh Forbes, because there are other Josh Forbeses, but I've staked the claim that I'm the best one.
Yes. I think we can all agree with that.
Which is funny because I actually started following like other Josh Forbeses, and so now. Like I posted something recently, and there's like Josh Forbes likes this. I'm like, yeah, I do. Anyway, so best Josh Forbes, yeah,
perfect.
Check me out.
At this point, you should know where to find us, but you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, /our app at frightmarespodcast. Our email is stayspooky@outlook.com. That'll do it for this bonus episode. Josh, we want to thank you so much for joining us. It has been an absolute pleasure. We are looking forward to maybe Destroy All Neighborhoods, but anything else that you will be involved with.
Thanks, guys.
Next month, we're still continuing the history of horror, and we will be doing, oh my God, what starts next month? Oh, Alien. We'll be doing Alien from 1979. So until then, stay tuned and
stay spooky.